All right, everybody, good evening to you. We are in Daniel chapter 7, and we're going to begin about verse 23. Daniel 7, verse 23. But that's kind of right in the middle of the thought, so we'll back up just a couple of verses. Where we're at, the chapter is really divided into two parts. You have the vision, and then you have the explanation, the meaning behind the vision. So we're in the second half, where we're getting the interpretation of the vision. So, to condense it, basically Daniel saw a vision of four great beasts of non-traditional construction, and the fourth of which is the one we're describing right now. It has 10 horns, and then separate from that has an additional horn that is distinct from the rest. And if you go back to verse 21, it says, "I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them." It doesn't necessarily mean it won a war. It just means it was domineering, overpowering, until, verse 22, "The Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom." So that's where we left off last week, with this idea that there is this terrible, domineering, wicked ruler who is going to come to power, that's going to oppress and abuse the people of God. That's all in the future tense from Daniel's perspective. It's our past tense. It's already happened. It's from Rome. But that this evil ruler will be a commanding force to do great evil, and he will do great evil, but then God will remind everyone who's actually in charge. And that's kind of the idea behind verse 22, that the idea of victory over an oppressive kingdom is presented to us in a very worldly kind of way. It's an apocalyptic vision, so it uses elements of the world to represent other things. It uses worldly things to represent spiritual things. It's kind of just a vision. It's a writing style. So in that sense, you have Daniel is basically saying to himself, how do I convey the idea that God's people are going to defeat the Roman Empire? But he doesn't mean defeat the Roman Empire like we're going to storm the castle and cut off heads of the king and his court and plant our flag where his flag was. It's not that kind of victory. Ours is a spiritual victory. But he's working within the purview of a worldly environment with worldly imagery. And so he has to present that in that kind of a context. So how do you describe victory over an empire? Well, you describe it in that sense. You describe it in a worldly way. A conquest. And a conquest looks like a total conquest when you really do win. Verse 22, the saints will possess the kingdom. You will not only just scrape by, you're not just going to barely win. You're not going to be just thankful that you survived. No, you're going to put your foot on their neck. You're going to dominate them. You're going to oppress them. Not literally. We're not called for that kind of lifestyle. But in the context of a vision to describe what victory looks like, that's the way it's described. It's only just to say you're going to be beaten down, but God will make you victorious. And in a very poetic way that is said. Verse 23. "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces." Again, we had four beasts. Each one represents its own kingdom. And as we went through it already, the first one represented Babylon, and the second one represented Medo-Persia, and the third, Macedonia, or the kingdom of Alexander the Great, Greece. And so here's this fourth one. Well, if you follow in that, we've already had Daniel chapter 2, so we already know kind of the way these things are arranged. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, next follows is Rome. Not just in history, but in the way God is laying out his prophecies too. So we already have a leg up on guessing, and pretty educated guessing, what this fourth kingdom is. And you can kind of insert that in here, that puzzle piece, stick in it as a fit, and it does. Verse 23, if that's Rome, then what is he saying about Rome? It is diverse from all kingdoms, bigger and badder than all who came before. That fits. Devours the whole earth. That fits. I mean, they didn't get to Spain, or not Spain, they didn't get to South America, but nobody got to South America from the purview of the Bible writers and readers. It wasn't looked at, and the earth was what we know, and what they knew Rome had. "And shall tread it down and break it in pieces." Not a nice empire. And verse 24, "And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise." So if this kingdom is Rome, then the 10 kings are 10 Caesars. Of course, Rome had more than 10, and we had the whole list on the board of how you might arrange it and figure out what 10 is which, and so forth. But let's just hold that thought for a second. 10 horns out of this kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. That'd be the little horn, if you remember earlier in the prophecy. And he shall be diverse from the first 10 that were mentioned. And he shall subdue 3 kings. And so I gave you the list. I'm not going to rewrite the whole list again, but it ends with the idea that Vespasian is this little horn, the Emperor Vespasian in Roman history, who was this distinct and uniquely powerful and deadly emperor who punished and hurt the people of God, and how his connection to subduing, or in the metaphor, ripping out from the roots those 3 other horns that directly preceded him. Well, you had 3 emperors, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, who each one overthrew the other one, coup after a coup after a coup, bringing a lot of instability to the empire. But Vespasian kind of reestablished some stability. And so that idea, if you follow the history and you see, does that kind of fit? Can I see that in Daniel's vision? And yes, you can. Doesn't mean 100% certainty that's what it is. It just means I can put that puzzle piece there and it fits, and all the pieces fit around it. Maybe the whole puzzle is upside down, but it fits. So that's what I'm going with. 25. And he, this horn, shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall, the King James says, wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. That's the big verse. Let's back up. Look at the beginning of 25. The little horn, it says, will speak great words, not good words, not kind words, not sweet words, but big words, impactful, bold, audacious, in this context, blasphemous even words. He attacks the people of God, called here the saints of the Most High. How does he attack them? Well, the text gives you a specific example. He changes times and laws. It just so happens that one of the very first things that Vespasian did when he became emperor was to target the Jews in the empire, particularly in the Judean region, and started disrupting when they were allowed to go to tabernacle and when they were allowed to partake in worship and things like that. So again, the history of it plays out with what you see Daniel saying. He's not explicitly saying this, but what does he say? He says they will change times and laws to wear out the saints of the Most High. He will disrupt the regular schedule of the way God's people live their lives. God's people in this context are not Christians, they're Jews. And that's from Daniel's perspective. So you can see that. You can see how that plays out in history. But as much as he is in control and as much damage as he is going to do, God is the one who is really in control. He only has a fool's perspective of control. He has a seeming amount of control. But God is the one in charge, not Vespasian. I'm going to get to the end of this verse when you get to the times, and dividing of time, and what your Bible may say. But I just want to make a point here about this, because you break up the Bible in 2 halves, Old Testament, New Testament, right? Leading up to Christ, and then the life and the era of Christianity. And everything leading up to Christ, Sean mentioned the verse in the Devo, God works all things together for good to those who love God, which can be easily taken out of context, because all Paul is saying there is God has worked out the system to produce what he wants it to be, the big picture stuff. Evil people will do evil to you, and sometimes the only reason for it is the devil's evil, and he prods people to do evil things. But in the big picture, God has a plan, and God works out his plan to do his will. Well, you see that in the Old Testament. God worked out his plan to accomplish his will, which throughout the Old Testament is the bringing in of the Christ. Now, if I am living in that time period, and if I have some amazing sense of foresight and can appreciate that, then while I'm suffering, I might tell myself, okay, this is a hardship, this is a difficulty, but I know it's going to be worth it because I know God is just using all of these things to bring about the Christ. I can see that plan carrying out. Okay, fine. Well, now Christ has come, and people are still suffering, and people are still hurting. And not a literal Vespasian, but other Vespasians are still out there, evil people doing evil things to hurt the people of God, as this one was doing, still is being done. It's not like you can say, well, sure, there's this evil guy who'll do evil, but when Jesus comes, that's all done away with. No, because evil people are still doing evil. And so very naturally, will someone ask the question, why, God, is all this evil still going on? I thought the point of it was to get us ready for the Christ, so we can have a way out of evil, but all I see is more evil. Evil is still everywhere. So what's the deal? And that is the whole other side of it. It wasn't just you have these hardships to prepare you for the Christ. There has always been this other idea. Hardships make faithful people, or hardships destroy unfaithful people who thought before the hardship they were faithful. That's the truth. That's Old Testament or New Testament. People had hardships in the Old Testament, and you could find some way to spin it and say, okay, but it makes a point because the Christ is about to come. But for that individual person, it's his own individual or her own individual hardship. And they're probably not thinking about, well, this is all to plant the seed for the Messiah to come. They're thinking about how it affects them. And for them, the same truth applies that it applies to us, which is your hardship is a trying fire that will either melt you or harden you. It will either make you tougher or it'll break you. So you decide what it's going to be. You decide how it's going to affect you. But you don't get to say to God, why are you doing this hard thing to me? It's not fair. You don't get to say to God, why do I have to go through this hard thing, as though no one else has hard things. That's not what it's about. The point of the difficulty is for you to strengthen your relationship with Christ and to say, I'm going to be strong with you and I'm going to go through the fire with you. Not turn the fire off, go through the fire. Jesus never promised to turn the fire off until the end when you have gone through it. So I can see a Jew reading this and reading Daniel's words and thinking, okay, we're going to go through this hardship, but that's just till Christ comes. And no wonder they put him on the cross, because he wasn't the Messiah they wanted. He wasn't the Messiah who promised to take away all their problems in the world. He was the Messiah who promised to give them a reason why their problems wouldn't matter. And that's not what they wanted. They wanted problems go away, not problems put in context. And so, of course, they killed him. It wasn't what they wanted, because they missed that other side of it. You have hardships to make you tougher, to make you stronger, to make you more faithful. It's a secular saying, but you can make it applicable. And I'm probably going to butcher it, so if I do, I don't mean to, because I don't have this in my notes. I just thought of it. It's something like, I'm going to get it wrong, but I'll end up finding the right answer. It's something like hard times make hard people, and hard people make good times. I got it wrong. It's something like hard people make tough men, and tough men make good times, and good times make soft men, and soft men make bad times. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you've seen it on Facebook, I'm sure. You got it, John?
No, it's reminding me of James when he says, count it all joy when you face various trials. That's what you're saying. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, that's very true.
It builds steadfastness and talks about other things it does for you.
And I'm going to mention that in just a second. Not that verse, but thank you for mentioning that. But that idea, how you have to choose. It's a decision. It's a voluntary thing to react positively to our trial. Because I can walk over to you, John. I can smack you in the face, and it's going to hurt. Even if I hit like a girl and you're the toughest man in the room, it's still going to hurt. You can't control the involuntary physical reaction. But whether or not you retaliate depends on your faithfulness to Christ. And you have to voluntarily choose not to retaliate.
But if I retaliate, then you have to choose not to retaliate.
Yes, and then we're Samson. At some point, someone's lighting the tails of foxes on fire, and we haven't learned the lesson. So, yeah, but the point is, you can smack someone in the face and they're going to physically feel the pain of it. They can't control that. But they can control what they do with it. And that's the Christian's choice. I can't help that it hurts. And you express that hurt in a lot of ways. You cannot read the Psalms very far without somebody yelling at God. Why is this hurting so bad? Why have you forgotten about me? Why have you forsaken me? Listen, why have you forsaken me did not begin on the cross. That's Psalm 22. That's David. David said, why have you forsaken me? Jesus is just quoting the man, okay? We've all said that. How I react to it, how I come out of that, determines what kind of person I'm going to be. Can't help that it hurts, but how I handle it is what matters. But you can look up that expression about hard times making hard people. It's very apt, very apropos to this. But it was what I was thinking of. I can see a Jew reading this and thinking, oh, great, it'll be fine when the Messiah comes. And then the real Messiah came, and it wasn't all what they thought it would be. Because they thought he would march in. They thought he would be literal. He'd march in swinging a sword, cutting off heads of the Caesar and so forth. And he went and willingly died. And they weren't prepared for that. All right, anyway, back to the text. So how long am I going to have to suffer under the thumb of this evil person? How long am I going to have this hardship under the oppressive rule of this evil beast? And the expression in the King James is, until the time, times, and the dividing of time. How does your Bible put that phrase?
Time and half a time.
Half a time? Does everybody's Bible say half a time? Yeah. All right. Well, we've encountered this unit of measurement, we'll say, before. All right? Until the time, and times. And my Bible says the dividing of times, because you take a time and you divide it, and you got 1 over 2. You got half. All right, but that's not what we're doing with this one. So yours says dividing of time, or half a time, which just makes it more literal, makes it easier to get to the math. A time, a times, and a half. A 1 and a 2, which makes 3 and a half. Now we've already encountered 3 and a half in this prophecy. We've already encountered it in the form of 350. Same idea. Now whether that's 350 days, or 350 months, or 350 years, or 3.5 days, or weeks, or months, or years, or feet, or gallons, or whatever the unit of measurement that we're using is, that part doesn't matter. In apocalyptic language, the number means something, not how long in a literal sense. Because again, we're not taking this literally. We're not literally chopping off heads. We're not literally storming castles. We're not literally under the oppressive thumb of a ruler, an actual 11-horned monster. Not literally. For 3.5 some periods of time, years or decades or whatever. But the number 3.5 in apocalyptic writing signifies an incomplete, not a whole, not until you're finished, but until God cuts it off. He's not going to be done. Vespasian, the evil, is not going to be done persecuting you. But God will say, okay, you're done. I've decided you're done. I'm going to cut it off. It is a number. What's 3.5 half of? 7 in apocalyptic writing signifies wholeness, completion, thoroughness, a fullness of something. It's not the number for holy. We misapply that in Revelation. It's the number for completion. God is complete, which is why 7 is usually described to God. But it's the number for completion. Incomplete, complete. You'll suffer, but not forever. You'll suffer, but God will put an end to it. It's not until they're done, the evil, it's till God says it's done. So God is done with it. So don't read it like, well, is it 3.5 years or 350 years? Where years isn't even in the verse, in the Hebrew or the English. It's a period of time until God says it's over. Now, I want to go back to the question that I was ranting about just a minute ago, and I want to look at it from a different perspective. 350 or 3.5, the incomplete time. So I'm going to suffer until God decides I'm not going to suffer anymore. And all that does when I hear that is it puts in my mind, I hear I'm reminded that God has the power to stop this at any time. So why is he making me go through it at all? If God could stop it at the end of when he decides the 3.5 is done, then why can't he stop it today? Doesn't he see that I'm hurting? Doesn't he know the pain that it's causing? Not just me, but those around me and so forth. Doesn't he know that some people who, might have stuck with him if the times were easier are now falling away because the times are harder? Doesn't he want them to be faithful? And we're looking at all of that purely from a selfish, worldly perspective. Our focus is entirely on how much it hurts in the physical. But if I'm the oppressor and I go over there and I smack John Ward in the face, it's a physical action, and that's all I can do. I cannot make John Ward not be faithful. Now he can decide, I'm going to retaliate, I'm going to take vengeance, I'm going to do what Jesus said not to do in Romans chapter 12. I'm going to go after him. Now he's making that choice, but I didn't make that choice for him. He made that choice. He chose not to learn the lesson. The lesson is this. When you have hardships and you have persecution and you have difficulties in the world, the most it can do is hurt your body. The most it can do is hurt your mind and hurt your psyche and hurt your emotions and hurt this outer person. But it cannot hurt your soul unless you choose to let it hurt your soul. Does that make sense? Am I being clear? I hate to repeat myself. I'm not trying to be, just a mean lecturer up here. But you have to hammer that home with some people because, I'm not going to draw it. There are two kinds of Christians. There are two kinds of people who sit in the pews every Sunday that the preacher sees, that the song leader sees, or you see if you look around. There are two kinds of Christians, people who call themselves Christians. There's the ones who get it and the ones that don't get it. And the ones that get it are the ones who, they may have never told themselves this, but because they have made the commitment and they have determined to keep their word to God, they are going to go even to death for the Lord. Now, they may never have the opportunity. They may never have the privilege of dying for the Lord, but they will do so. They may not even know that they will do so because they've never faced the situation and they never contemplated it. But they are the kinds of Christians who mean it, who will go to their death. And if you're willing to do that, you'll endure anything else, because that's the end of the line. So I'll take whatever punishment I get in the meantime. And what those Christians need is the encouragement of every other Christian. We need to be the ones to tell those kinds of Christians, keep it up. You can do it. It's that way. Let's go. I'm right behind you. Because what you see at the end of their line is death. A physical death. Because they cannot destroy the soul. And so they do not fear the one who can just destroy the body. So go. I'm right behind you. They're going to kill you. And I'm next. And won't it be wonderful there? That's that kind of attitude. When with the Savior we enter the glory land. Won't it be wonderful there? What's the next line? You remember? Endeth the troubles and cares of this land. Won't it be wonderful there? I'm going there, but I'm behind you in this very frustrating long line that ends in a guillotine. Would you please hurry it up? Because it's my Savior too, and I would like to see him. The other kind of Christian is the one who does not get it. The other kind of Christian is a Christian who sits in the pew because it's convenient. Because somebody brought them, and they just go just by inertia. They're just rolling along. And as long as it's convenient, you'll see them. And they may even toss a 20 in the plate on Sundays. They may even muddle through a song. They may even close their eyes during a prayer. But as soon as it becomes inconvenient, where did that person go? I haven't seen them in a long time. Where are they? Are they anywhere? What's happened to them? They just quit. It didn't mean anything. So they quit coming. They didn't get it. Yes, ma'am.
Matthew, of course, I became a Christian 19 years ago on Halloween. It's my anniversary's coming up. And when I became a Christian, I was under the impression that every person that attended the Church of Christ felt and thought the same I did. I mean, I was on fire. I really wanted to learn the Word. And I was so naive to think we were all the same. But, you know, as the years went on, I realized that there are just some people that don't get it, or their hearts aren't open to it. And I don't know if it's because they don't study, or they just don't open their mind up to it. It's kind of confusing sometimes when you talk to people about that. But I thought, this is the real, true religion. This is the mind of God that we have in front of us. And if you study this, we all think the same, and there shouldn't be any difficulties, and we're not a denomination. I mean, I was Catholic when I grew up. That was the denomination. But I thought, wow, I finally found where I need to be. So you're right about that. There's two kinds. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And I would look at people to say, aren't you getting it? You know, why are you not attending? I don't know. I mean, don't you feel that you need to be there when you study this? So,
And it's not, I don't want just, and no, you don't either, just limit it to showing up on Sunday for an hour. You know, or that's the bare minimum. Don't misunderstand. That's the floor. You build from there. But it's not just about that. It's about your willingness to endure the hardships that come with being a Christian. And there are those who are willing to endure to death and beyond. And those who, at the first sign of a broken nail, they're running away from Jesus. As soon as it becomes inconvenient, not even hard, just inconvenient, they're running away. Now, and as much as the people who get it need our encouragement, and as much as the people who don't get it need a rebuke, and that's fact, that's Bible, that's 2 Timothy 4 verse 2. Reprove, rebuke, and exhort. There's three things you got to do. Two of them are negative. Reprove, rebuke, and exhort. Exhort, reprove. In between are those Christians who are waffling, who are teetering, who are on the edge, who are struggling. They don't need a rebuke. They don't need a rebuke. You can say encouragement in a certain kind of way, but it's a different kind of encouragement than what those Christians who get it need. What those Christians in the middle need is love and patience and support and a reminder that God is there and God is with them, and that they are not the only ones who have waffled. Because again, you cannot read the Psalms. You can't go 3 pages without finding someone who's waffling. And more often than not, those Psalms that begin with, God, why have you abandoned me today, end with, I'm so thankful that I have you, because I don't know what I would do. I would never get out of this cave without you. That's Psalm 22 begins with, my God, why have you forsaken me? And Psalm 22 ends with, I'm so glad you have not forsaken me. That's the one in the middle, the one who just needs that gentle nudging. Anyway, verse 26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion and consume, and to consume and to destroy it unto the end. In other words, God will bring judgment against this fiend. God will bring judgment against this enemy. You have this hardship that will not last forever. It's temporary. And when it is over, when God says it's time, judgment will come against your enemy. You can rest assured that will happen. God is in control over both sides. He's not standing on the sideline with you saying, I'm sorry this is happening. I don't know what I can do about it, but it'll be okay. No, he's saying, be patient and then I'll handle it. 27. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. There's two kingdoms and dominions here in this verse. The one is the kingdom and dominion of evil. The one is the kingdom and dominion of Christ. The kingdom and dominion, the greatness of the kingdom of evil is going to be defeated by God. And you, the citizen of God's kingdom, are going to subdue that other kingdom, defeat that other kingdom, put your proverbial boot on their necks, completely conquer their kingdom, proverbially cut the head off their king, proverbially plant your flag in his castle. That's the metaphor of total victory in that worldly warfare kind of, illustration. And again, see that. The kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole sky shall be given to the kingdom, to the people of the saints of the Most High. You will conquer through Jesus. You're more than conqueror. Through the Most High, whose other kingdom, his kingdom, is an everlasting kingdom. And all dominion shall serve and obey him. Here's this kingdom that's oppressing us, that's defeating us. And God says, don't worry, in the end you will defeat them. And you will have your own kingdom that will defeat them, that will never be destroyed. 28. Hitherto is the end of the matter. Here endeth the prophecy. As for me, Daniel, the King James says cogitations, the whole reflections and all of that troubled me. And my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Daniel, by this point, is an old guy. I don't remember how old, but he's old. And it's taking a physical toll to have these visions that he's had thus far. And he's got more to come still. And so he is visibly sickened, visibly shaken by it. He has basically experienced a vision that spans half a millennium of prophecy and events. You can imagine the physical effect it would have on it. If you've ever been so emotionally drained that you physically ache, if you've been so emotionally spent that it affects you physically, well, you can kind of imagine what Daniel's going through here. Now, as for the rest of it, I kept the matter in my heart. He dwells on it, he meditates on it, but he doesn't just start immediately telling everybody about it. And you'll see that play out again in the next chapter as we open up to chapter 8. We still have time, so we can do that now. Here's another vision as you open up to chapter 8. I'll just tell you the end of it to tie in with the end of 7. He's going to get the vision. He's going to be told to seal this away until the right time. And when that right time will be is after he's written it and he's gone. He passes on the letters to be read after him. So it's not the kind of thing where you need to immediately go preaching in the street corner as the prophets sometimes did. This is a vision for the distant future. Write it down, record it, dwell on it, but this one doesn't go out publicly just yet. Any comments about chapter 7 before we go to 8?
What years was Vespasian in power? Ralph?
No, I can't. I don't know. I can't remember. I can look it up, but I don't remember, and I would just be wrong.
90, I think so.
Well,
90 to 70 to 90 in that range.
Yeah, there were several between 70 and 90 because you have Nero. Nero is about 70.
70.
Nero burned the temple. At the end, you have Domitian in like 96. He might have been. I don't remember if Vespasian was just before Domitian or not. If he was, it was the early 90s. You speak with such confidence. I'm going to assume you know, so we'll just say in the 90s.
I don't know.
So
He was there.
yeah, it was late first century. I know that much. Nero was 70. I know that. He
They differ on the times, but
Yeah.
some of the books here you say 90.
somewhere mid to late 70s. Oh, mid to late first century, but I don't remember. I have to look it up. All right, chapter 8. A vision of the kingdom to come. If you remember, we had our circles. This is in the same circle as chapter 2, giving visions of the kingdom to come. But so is 7. They both belong to the same idea. So, chapter 8, verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, Daniel says, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. After the one that appeared to me at the first. That is to say, I had a vision in chapter 7. I have not had a vision since, and now I've had another vision since that one. So this follows chapter 7 in the book. It follows chapter 7 in the chronology. Chapter 7 was the first year of Belshazzar. This is now the third year of Belshazzar. So he has another vision. Let's see what it says. Verse 2. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. That's not in the vision. That's where he was when he got the vision. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. That was in the vision. So, two different things here. Where is he in the real world, and where is he in his vision? In the real world, he is at the palace of Shushan, which is the winter palace of the king of Babylon. In the province of Elam, which will later be a capital city of the Medo-Persian Empire when they conquer Babylon. So he's over there. He's doing the king's business, okay? And he sees in his vision that he is standing, and that's like, he's facing the river Ulai, all right, which is a river that runs through there, and it's adjacent to, it's a tributary of the Tigris River, Tigris and Euphrates, all right? I'm not going to draw it on the map, but you know. It's in the back of your Bibles. I can just reference that. Verse 3. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I would assume by that he's watching them grow, and he sees the way it goes. So this I will illustrate for you, all right? So you have a ram, all right? So, and it has a horn, and it's got a higher horn. But y'all didn't see that coming, did you? All right, so it's got 2, I'm just kidding, we'll draw a ram, okay? It's something, you know, you're going to have horns, you know. It's got eyes. All right, so you got your ram. Except it's not like this, because as we read, what's important, although that kind of does it, we'll do it like this instead. You have a bigger horn. Let's just put it that way. So it's a completely off-kilter looking animal. We're looking at it from the front, if you can't tell. Everyone with me? Abby, you with me? You got it? Okay. Ram, 2 horns, one's bigger than the other, and he's watching it, and I would assume, again, it's my assumption, he's watching it grow because this one came up last. This one grew after, and it grew bigger after. So he's watching it, all right? Yeah, that's verse 3. Verse 4. We're not doing any interpretation. That's the second half of this chapter. Verse 4, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. All right, you're given a clue now of the animal's origin. All right, so, I lied, we're going to do a map real quick. All right, so you've got this animal. So he's here. I mean, this is not to scale, all right? And it's already blending in with the ram, which, hey, that's fine. All right, so here's the ram. It's attacking to the north, it's attacking to the south, it's attacking to the west. So what is this place of origin?
The east?
Yeah, I mean, if it's in the north, it's not attacking from the north, or to the north, it would be from the north. But this is attacking to the north, to the west, and to the south. So it comes from the east. So he sees this ram with this 2 horns, one is bigger than the other, and it's attacking in every direction but from its origin. So its origin is of the east. And as it's attacking, the way it's described, it can't be stopped. Into verse 4. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. If he set his mind to conquer, you weren't stopping him. But he did according to his will, and he became great. Not necessarily good, but big. Although you can make the argument good, but still, the point here is big and powerful. All right? Verse 5. And Daniel is just watching this whole thing. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat, the King James says. What's your Bible say there?
Male.
Just male goat?
Yeah.
Okay. Came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So now here's another animal. So we'll just go over here and draw, this animal here, Which, I mean, this kind of looks more like a rhinoceros, but, hey, it's a vision. It can look like whatever he wants. But yeah, not very much a goat. But, we're all just pretending. It's fine. So anyway, out of the west, he sees this animal with a horn in the middle of his head, which someone yelled out the word unicorn. Similar to that, except ram, not horse. But that's the idea. All right? And notice it's the way it moves. Again, my Bible says, touch not the ground. What does your Bible say?
Without touching the ground.
Just without touching the ground? So imagine its swiftness, its movement is so graceful, so smooth, so fast, it looks like it's not even touching the ground. If you've ever seen an animal run and move so quickly and so smoothly and effortlessly, it's like it's gliding, that kind of idea. That's what he's seeing. All right? And it had this notable horn between his eyes. Verse 6. And he, that's this guy, came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. Now, we've already introduced this animal is doing all this conquest, and no one can stop him. Everyone who's tried has failed. You can't get anything out of his hand. Well, now here comes a new challenger, all right? A wild unicorn has appeared, and it's going to come in from this way, from the west, to attack. And as rams and goats and animals of that family do, you know, they're going to butt heads. But I just want to point out, even though Daniel is not going to get as explicit, if this was Ezekiel, Ezekiel, he gets graphic, but Daniel won't do that. He's going to play it much more PG. But what do you think is going to happen when these 2 animals butt heads? Because if this was an animal with 2 horns taking on an animal with 2 horns, it would just be, you know, one of these. But it's not. It's an animal with 2 horns and a big target right here in the middle, you know, where its brain is. And here's an animal with a horn right in the middle. So if it's coming what do you think is about to happen? It's about to be very graphic, but Daniel's going to keep it PG. Verse 7. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved, the King James says, with choler, with anger, with furious rage against him, and smote the ram. Now, plugging a hole. He just, you know, the ram. All right. But the result is he broke his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. No power in this one to stand before this one. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped on him. He cast him down to the ground and stomped on him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Look how the language is flipped. Look how the turntables halved. Here is this ram. You can't stop him from conquering anything. This guy not only stops him, but he so conquers him, you can't stop him from conquering him. You see how that played out? Not the best for the ram in question. All right. Verse 8. Therefore, the he-goat, that's the male goat over here, the unicorn, waxed great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. So, we're not giving any interpretations yet, but we're just playing it out, all right? Conquer, 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 cannot be stopped. I'll stop him. They attack, crash, destroyed, and now here's this guy. And he is not described as being beaten by some other animal. He is not described as, failing to live up to his reputation. He doesn't defeat himself from within. You're not given anything. It's just all you're told, very abruptly, is he's waxing great, growing, increasing in greatness, and then suddenly his horn, which is the whole reason he won in the first place, breaks. And horns in apocalyptic language, and in any metaphor, are going to be a symbol of power. Well, here's an animal that has tremendous power. One part of it grows in greater prominence and power, but still great power. Here's an animal that is singular and united in its power, and it defeats this guy. And there at its apex, at its peak, at its most powerful, its source of its power breaks, and very particularly into 4s. All right? Again, no interpretations, just the vision from verse 8, broken 4s, and 4 notable ones came from it toward the 4 winds of heaven. Verse 9. And out of one of them, out of one of the 4ths of the horn, came forth this little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. The pleasant land would be God's land, God's people. So here you have the conflict. This guy is now done. Here's this horn, but now he's done, and in his place are 4 horns, 1 horn that becomes 1, 2, 3, 4 horns. And one of those horns is the one we're going to follow, and the way it's described, it grows to be great and powerful, though it won't be as great as the original, toward the south, the east, and toward the pleasant land. So toward the south, toward the east, and if you can still read this map, which I seriously doubt you can, but this is the promised land, toward the pleasant land, toward the land of God's people. All right? Now again, you may already have a hunch. You may know enough about world history. We've already talked about some of these things. You can guess, but no interpretations, just the prophecy. Verse 10. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stomped on them. My Bible says host and stars. Is that what your Bible says?
Host of heaven.
Host of heaven, yeah. Which, no, I'll hold off. No interpretations. Anyway, so he conquers, he grows, he becomes great, and he's so dominant that he even subdues the stars of the heaven, the stars of the sky. All right, verse 11. Indeed, furthermore, yea, the King James says, he magnified himself even to the princes of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So he has grown so big. Remember, we've already identified, it's not a spoiler, the promised land. The pleasant land is called here, but that idea. And so we're getting buzzwords and phrases that are going to draw our attention to God's people. Like when it says, he magnifies himself even to the prince of the host. He magnifies himself as though he is as great as the ruler of the stars. Wonder who that is. And by him, this evil horn, the daily sacrifice in the pleasant land is taken away, and the place of his sanctuary is cast down. Verse 12. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. Verse 12. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced, and it prospered. If the host is the people of God, and the control of God, those who are faithful to God, whether that's angels or just Jews, and that's up to interpretation. Either way, what you've got is the host working against the people of God, which I think makes it to be the Jews, and the ruler of the Jews is God. It doesn't have to be the ruler of the angels to be God. So I think what you have here, and I'm not doing interpretation, we're just explaining verse 12. You have this person who has subdued the host and has broken the host and he's destroyed the sacrifices of the host. But then it says in verse 12 that some of the host is given to him to work against the daily sacrifice. He is not alone in working against the sacrifice. Some of the people of God are working against the daily sacrifice. Traitors, transgressors, who would in this case cast the truth down to the ground. And so that it doesn't get to be practiced and prospered. Only evil gets to be practiced and prospered. History is filled with examples of people in an occupation siding with the enemy occupiers. And I don't just mean being kind and polite. I don't mean going the extra mile. I mean being, what history calls them bootlickers and people like that. People who go out of their way to aid and abet the work of the evil empire in question. All right, so that's your reference. 13. Then I heard one saint speaking. This is Daniel in the vision, so he's got all this going on. And I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said to the one who was speaking, how long shall the vision be concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? In other words, Daniel's watching all this play out. Dodge ram and all. He sees this whole spectacle in front of him, and he's thinking what this guy's thinking, which is, when is this all going to happen? And particularly, how long is this going to last? Because what I'm hearing is God's people are going to be oppressed. Their ability to worship God is going to be taken away from them. So how long is that going to go on? What's the timetable of this oppression? And so he hears someone speaking, and someone else says, how long is this going to go on? Verse 14. And he said to me, the answer comes, even though Daniel's not the one who asked the question, the answer goes to Daniel, until 2,300 days, the King James says. What does your Bible say? Does everyone's Bible say 2,300 days?
Evenings and mornings.
Evenings and mornings.
Yes. But does everyone say 2,300?
Yeah.
All right. The King James very mistakenly just says days. But it's not days, it's evenings and mornings. Which means you got to take this number, if you want to know how many total days it is, and cut it in half. What's half of 2,300? Someone check my math. I believe it's 1,750. I believe it is because I wrote it down. And I surely would have checked my math when I wrote it.
16.
Is it 1,650?
150.
Yes. 7 and 7 is 4.
Wait, are you telling me that it's not 1,750? Everyone, somebody fact check Frank. I don't do math, Kieran. Don't make that face. 11? Anyway,
You probably just did a fancy one.
give me your phone. I
It
need
looks
your
like
phone.
it says-
Now I'm super nervous that I did all this wrong. Just a second. Now I need a calculator. Everyone just, the bell's about to ring anyway. Just take 5. But now I'm super nervous.
No, babe, swipe over.
I got it.
That little thing.
Sorry.
It's a new phone.
Okay, that's fine. Woo! Almost lost my cool there. All right. Anyway, so here's the number. So the question was, how long will this last? And the number that you get is not precisely, but basically between 3 and 3.5 years. Okay. Whew, I was afraid I was completely off, which I would have been at 1750. Someone didn't double check their math. Anyway, the point is, how long will this last? And the number that you're given is what basically equates to another way of writing 3.5. which is the figure we've been given over and over in prophetic writing to say an incomplete period of time. How long will it last? Well, it'll last until I say it won't last anymore. It won't last until they're done with you. It'll last until I'm done with them. That's the point here. So in other words, once again, as with chapter 7, I'm looking for an exact number here. God, give me the countdown. And God says, no, I'll give you an idea. The idea is until I am done with it. All right, that's fine, because chapter 8:15, we get the interpretation, which you can probably guess some of it, but we'll cover that next week. 8:15, Daniel 8. Thank you all very much.
Matthew, you probably wrote 11:50 and you're writing what got 7.
No, I typed.
Well,
There's no helping me there.
said that out loud.
Flat out got it wrong. I got it right eventually.